Hope everyone is having a great evening so far. I am Queen Amunet, as you all know by now, or if you do not know, I reside here in Atlanta, Georgia, and I am so honored to be a part of this. It's your turn to heal sis conference. I have my two amazing panelists here with me. These are two amazing queens that I have come to know and appreciate their minds, their brains, their energy. And I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves. So we'll start with Miss Giovanna.
Hi everyone, my name is Giovanna. I am a spiritual coach, motivational speaker, and author. I actually published my book, Soul on Soul Contact, and it has to do with your whole personal journey of understanding yourself. And that's kind of been what my journey has been. What I want to help others is to empower them by understanding their darkness and not feeling tied back from it, but feeling empowered
from it. Awesome. All right, Miss Laqwanda.
Hello, my name is Laqwanda Roberts-Buckley. I am the founder of Healing Black Women. I am an individual that is a hardcore mental health advocate. I've been in the field of social services for 17 years this year. I am a mental health clinician. I work in emergency services. I'm also a certified life coach, and this is just my passion. We work with Healing Black Women. We have 6 other contributors, which Miss Queen Amunet is one of them. And we really believe in just inspiring and empowering women in all areas of their lives. So thank you so much for joining our conference. For those who've been with us in our previous panels, we thank you for coming back, and we hope you enjoyed the discussion tonight.
Awesome. Okay, so this session is called Self-Discovery Within Yourself. And the reason why this specific type of session came to me was because I went through a process of understanding what it means to discover my own self and my brokenness and being lost and not really knowing who I was. And so me and my panelists here, we have 3 main talking points that we're going to go over tonight. And the first one is being lost. The second one is self-discovering. And the third one is remaining in happiness. And so I would like to start with being lost and some of the subcategories of being lost. I asked my panelists, I asked them, what does it mean to be lost in your own self? And so for me, I said being lost in my own self was, for me, people not accepting me during the time where I really wanted people to be able to accept me, because I am a transgender woman of color and a trans woman of experience, and been transitioning for 4 years now. And when I knew at a very early age who I was, and people not being accepting put me in a place of brokenness and darkness, because I wanted to be accepted so bad. But when it didn't happen, I found myself being lost in acceptance. And a lot of people may not understand what for me what lost in acceptance mean. It means I lost myself in craving and desiring people to love me and just accept me, and I didn't realize that that I had to give people the option to be in or out of my life. So this led me to questioning my own self and put me in a dark place that was unfamiliar to me. So, Miss Giovanna, what does it mean to be lost in your own self? for you?
For me, I think it's an overall disconnection with self. It's not understanding, not seeing your true value because you've been so devalued for so long. And it's living through so many lies of what other people wanted you to do and who other people wanted you to be, that you wake up one day just depressed and angry and frustrated, and you're like, you don't understand why. And a lot of the times we lash out at other people and we get frustrated with other people about this disconnection, not realizing that we need to find ourselves. We need to sift through all of these lies of who we are and understand who we are and value ourselves. And it's really hard to do that if you don't know who you are. And when you lose yourself at such a young age, you grow up, and for so many years you just put on masks and masks, and one day you're just like you're suffocating from your masks.
Okay. So Miss Laqwanda, same question.
I would have to say for me is not knowing who all you are. I think sometimes we have this limited view of ourselves that you are supposed to do this, you're supposed to be this is your role, and not understanding that there is an expanse to your being, there's an expanse to your purpose, there's an expanse to your calling, there's an expanse to the things that you're good at. And we box ourselves in and we become lost because we don't know everything that we are created and meant to do. And we don't spend the time with ourselves needed in reflection to understand that we are so much more than a label that we sometimes place on ourselves has identified. And so for me, when that takes place, then that's when we become lost.
Awesome. So the next question was, how did it feel knowing that you were lost and nobody could be there to pull you out of that void but you? I'll let you start with that, Giovanna.
Well, to be honest, for so many years, I was putting it on other people. I was expecting them to understand me. I was expecting them to encourage me. I was expecting them to just love me. And I suffered a lot from my own self-love, like my lack in self-love. My self-hate was so strong that I was just struggling so bad. And when I got to the point of realizing that I had to be my own superhero was at my lowest point. It was when I was rock bottom, and God was like, all right, here you are. I'm going to sit you down and now I'm going to talk to you because you weren't listening for so many years.
Yeah. So for me, it was definitely a loneliness because a lot of people may not understand what it means to be living this life being a trans woman. So it was a lot of loneliness. There was a lot of depression there. And what I found out was that that I found myself almost doing anything to be recognized. I found myself almost doing anything to be accepted and to be loved by any and everyone that would give me that attention. But to be someone I'm not was one of my hardest things. And so what ended up happening was that me just wanted to be wanted, even if it was a lie. I just went along with it just to be comfortable. And I found myself willing to just be content in my voidness because I felt like nobody knew how sad and broken I was and disappointed I was that nobody wanted to accept me. And so that fell into me even going into a lot of other things that we're going to get into the next question as far as behaviors that were not healthy for me at all. So that void being by myself was just it was a very, very hard and tumultuous time for me. And I know I'm not alone in that because I feel like sometimes even just we as women period, we find ourselves in these spaces by ourselves and we don't know how to pull ourselves out of those dark places a lot of times. So being there and us being stuck there, a lot of times it's like, what else can we do? We have no one to pull us out of our situations, whether the situation presented itself, whether we put ourselves there, or it was an involuntary situation where it put us in that brokenness. Miss Laqwanda, what about you?
So this particular question about how I felt lost, when I felt lost in the world, became about when I first received my diagnosis for my mental health condition. I manage bipolar disorder and 2 more conditions, but I had been wandering the earth trying to figure out what it was I was meant to do. What was my calling? Searching, because I thought it was law school, but I was like, nope, not going to be a lawyer. Searching. And then I met these social workers and they were all therapists. I was like, oh my gosh, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a therapist. And a year into my career, I began to experience the onset of bipolar 1 disorder. I became actively psychotic. I was delusional. I was paranoid. And that eventually led me to not being able to work as a therapist. I was hospitalized. My only child had to go live with her father when she was 4, so I couldn't take care of my child, and I could no longer live by myself. To be in a place where you thought that you found your calling and felt like life just ripped it away from you was probably one of the most devastating things that has ever happened to me. And I tell people, just think about, the hurricane, or just think about the earthquake, or just think about the tornado, just think about the flood. Those are the events that take place. But think about what's left afterwards. That is where I felt lost. I could no longer be a mother. I had to return home at 30. I couldn't live by myself, and I couldn't go back to the career that meant everything to me. And so I was stripped of everything, and the only thing that was left was me, and I didn't know who she was because I thought I had found who I was. And it was the only thing I could say. It was devastating. And I spent years blaming myself, saying, how come you couldn't be stronger? How come you couldn't handle this? You're a Black woman. You should be able to handle everything. We're superheroes. We're Wonder Woman. And so not being able to do that, was devastating for me.
So crossing over to the third question. So some of those behaviors that you experienced during being lost, like how did that make you feel?
For me?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, for me, when I was at my lowest, it was with lupus. And it was when somebody told me that you're basically stuck in this undescribable pain and you have to rely on other people. And it was really hard for me because I wasn't able to have that security of self, of believing that like there was a future. I was struggling with depression. I was struggling with eating disorders. I was struggling just overall with just this massive self-hate. My huge disconnection was really with myself and just my destructive behaviors in any way that I could terrorize myself. It seemed, like it was like everybody else was doing it. Maybe this is what I'm supposed to do. I didn't understand the love language of giving yourself love. So when I did try and seek it from other people and I wasn't getting it, I was getting angry with myself. And lupus is literally your body attacking itself. And that was a direct reflection of my mental, my spiritual, just my whole aspect of self. And it was very struggling because I wasn't sure if there was even a future. And that was scary when you finally are at a point when you realize that you have no more control. Like, you don't have control. And to realize that in giving up control, there's a reason for everything. And to give up the control, that was when I finally was able to take a breath and just like, yeah.
Yeah. I know some of the behaviors for me that I experienced during being lost that unearthed themselves were extreme, unsafe sexual behaviors, because I lashed out looking for love in all the wrong places. And also keeping on a mask of happiness when inside I was dying, I was killing myself. You know, I just shared with my parents and my sisters that I went through a time during this period of being lost where I would cut myself. I was trying to self-medicate on medications. I was taking pills, you know, because growing up in a very, very religious setting as I did, it was extreme. It was extreme for me to be able to go to church and sit there knowing that, you know, I then was this boy that was flamboyant and no one wanted to love me. And, you know, when I left the church, and one of the reasons why I did leave the church was from a conversation that I had with then one of the pastors in the church, and told me that someone told me that I was this way, and didn't even ask or take the time out to ask me how I was doing, you know, how do I feel, ask me sensitive questions to get to know who I was. And so a lot of she didn't know, and my parents didn't know, and I shared this with them, that after I left that session with my then pastor, I got in my car and I had to ask myself, I was getting ready to ask myself, do I want to live or die? Because I had a lot of pills I was getting ready to take. And because I didn't want to live anymore, because I was so broken, I was so upset, I was so lost, and I was just this person that was so full of life once upon a time, and just wanted people to just love and embrace me, because I felt the love. I just embody love. And for me, when I didn't get that in return, it broke me. And so so a lot of those behaviors that were brought up after I couldn't use my body for, you know, for sexual desire or pleasure anymore, you know, and also, and at the time I was manipulating men because I was a trans woman. So I was able to get what I wanted, but I got it in all the wrong places. I always ended up being hurt and let down. And so to get even 20 minutes of attention, you know, was okay. But I didn't realize until I got older that it was just a bandage just to put over the wound that wasn't going to heal, because I was so broken. And while I felt like I wanted to heal, I just couldn't. And so what I found out and discovered was that I was creating a fantasy of love for myself. So, Miss Laqwanda, you want to chime in?
Yes, I think too, and I think if you guys notice, I'm about to say something that's mirrored across the board. Number one was trying to connect the people who didn't want me. And that was just what it was. When I was lost, I felt like if I had someone to recognize me, if I had someone to identify me, if I had someone that told me I was pretty, if I had someone that told me if I was smart, if I had someone that could tell me I could do it, then I would be able to make it through this.
Right.
I needed someone else to anchor on to and to pull me through. And so that led me to dealing with folks I had no business dealing with. That led me to accepting way less than I have ever accepted in my life. And it became a cycle. Well, that didn't work out. Whoop, let me hop to this. Oh, that wouldn't work out. Whoop, let me hop to that. You know, when I tell you I was on dating profiles like this, I was on dating apps like that. I was on there. And you know, but it was just honest. And it's something that you have to realize when you're feeling lost, that you have to be careful, because you'll put yourself in these situations, and any glimmer of light that you see, you'll grab onto it, and not knowing that it's dangerous. If you ever watch a nature documentary, and I love those, I think it's called the anglerfish. It lives in the deep, and there's complete darkness, and it has this little thing that sticks out, and it's a ball of light at the end, and it wiggles, and then its prey comes, because that's the light that it sees, because everything else is in darkness. Not really realizing when they go to that little fake light, because it is fake. Everything they tell you is fake. Everything they're trying to do for you is superficial. It's not going to be anything that lifts you up. And you go to that fake light thinking that you're about to get a reward, and then you die.
Yep.
We die spiritually, we die emotionally, we die financially, we die mentally trying to get to a fake light. And that's one of the behaviors that I was doing. I was trying to get to this fake light. And another thing was, I would isolate myself. And I would keep myself, because I'm like, that's the way I keep myself safe. You know, if connecting to someone, you know, wasn't working, then I'd do the extreme. And that's like, I have to keep myself safe. I gotta, you know, isolate myself. And isolating yourself is different from taking time for yourself. Because taking time for yourself, there's intentions that you're going to be working on things to build yourself up. When you're isolating, you're shutting down. And so those were the things that were happening when I was just out there.
Yeah, I could testify about those dating apps, because I was on just about everything out there. Just wanting a sense of belonging so desperately, and I almost ended up taking my own life several times, because just for 20 minutes I got a little loving, and it was over, and I was back in that same space. So, going to self-discovery. So, Giovanna, when did you say, you know what, enough is enough? And when did you say it's time to pick up the pieces and start putting things together?
It was after I was literally walking dead. It was when physically I was beating myself up, you know, with my illness that was basically that was supposed to be a lifetime illness, and they said it was incurable. When they said that, something inside me, some spirit inside me was like, no, I don't believe that. And it kind of like awoke this spirit within me, which was really what everything was supposed to do. I realized that our darkness is supposed to, you know, grow our strength. And I didn't realize that when I was struggling. I didn't realize that there was no one to help me. You know, when doctors can't help you, when your husband can't help you, when your friends can't help you, when no one can help you, you can't even help yourself, because you don't even love yourself. You don't know yourself. You hate yourself. You know, you're literally starving for love. And like you guys, you're looking in all the, you know, we're looking in all of these wrong places. We're self-sacrificing. We're degrading ourselves. We're belittling ourselves. And, you know, when we get to that point of just, we're empty, you know, we're just, there's nothing left. And it's such a scary place to be. But even in this discussion, we realize that there are so many people who are going through the same process, yet we are so scared to just show our vulnerability, to show our scars, to show our wounds, that we're struggling alone. And when we find out that we can't call on anyone else, that is kind of when I reconnected with spirit, was when it was the whole light was shifted. My whole focus was shifted. It was shifted off of my darkness. It was shifted for a glimmer, for just a second. It just looked like it was possible, like there was something else. And it was at that point that I realized that there's a bigger purpose. I have to survive this. I have to get through this. I have to be able to heal myself, because I knew that I could help other people. I knew that I was this light, but I was gone. Like there was no light, and I was searching, for other people to be that light for me. I was searching in every direction for a source of my happiness, a source of my love, a source for healing. And I couldn't find it. And I got so angry. I got frustrated. I got irritated. I was literally, physically, mentally, just I was broken. And when we get to that breaking point, we also need to realize it's okay to break. So many of us just feel like we need to hold it together. We need to hold it together for our family. We need to hold it together for the world. We just need to look like we've got it together. And he took me to a place where I could no longer hold it together, where I wasn't able to fake it anymore, where I wasn't able to put on a smile and hide anymore. I couldn't hide from my darkness. I was scared of my darkness. I was scared of my own reflection. I was just ready for change. And that's kind of when I said, God, help me. And I asked, and I realized that when was the last time I asked for help? When was the last time that I felt that I was worthy of asking for help, that I was worthy of asking for love from a loving source rather than something that had stipulations? We change ourselves so much to just be loved, appreciated, and accepted. And I got to the point where I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. Either you help me or help me one way or the other, because it's not going to work anymore like this. I'm not going to accept that I'm stuck like this, and I'm not going to accept that this is the end, but just show me. And it was asking. That is what changed. The pivotal point was asking. Even if I didn't feel at that time that I was worthy of it, I still asked. I was on my knees crying, asking. I couldn't do it. So giving up, surrendering was that point of just, it was like quicksand. Instead of struggling anymore, you simply allowed it.
Just admit. And one of the when you was talking about holding on and all of that, what came to mind for me was this illustration that I saw on Facebook. Was this rope being tied around someone's hand and them holding on to it, not realizing that you're self-inflicting more pain on yourself than just letting go. And that's what we do so many times to ourselves. Instead of just saying, I surrender, I submit, because there's nothing else I can do at this point, we tend to hold on and inflict more pain on ourselves. I know for me, like Oprah says, my aha moment was when I said, I just had to stop doing what I was doing. I hit rock bottom after my divorce. I lost everything. I walked away from 6 years of building a life with someone that I thought was real and genuine. And I walked away with nothing but my mattress, my clothes, and my car. That's all I had. I stayed with friends who for about a month before I could get everything and get parts of my life back together, because I was so lost. I cried so much, and I said, there's got to be no other way to go here but from up. I had hit rock bottom so hard. I was tired of lying, robbing Peter to pay Paul, James, and John. It was just so much, and all of my lying and all of the I hate to say it, but prostituted and just putting myself out there, all of that caught up with me eventually, to a point to where I didn't even recognize my own self. I didn't know who I was. My own family didn't know who this person was. My friends didn't know who this person was. Everyone was so concerned and worried. But it's like when you distance yourself like that, and you and your family and friends and everybody wants to reach out to you, and you're like, no, I'm good, and you're still lying and all this other stuff. I had to take one real good hard look in the mirror. And when I saw my skin had gotten so dark, I lost so much weight. I was breaking out, and just it was just horrible. And so I started what I like to call my own life of photosynthesis. And so to me, to kind of, I guess, kind of to just paint a picture of what photosynthesis looked like for me. If I'm pretty sure we all been through, stages of photosynthesis, and even if we remember in school, I'm not sure if it was maybe elementary school or even high school, you understand the dynamics of what photosynthesis does. And so I just want to paint the picture of what it looked like for me. I was the seed. We all women, we're the seeds. We were buried. We were in dark places, and the seed represents rock bottom. The seed is planted in whatever it wants to be planted in, and it's in the earth. You can't see it, so there's no sunlight. There's nothing happening. You're just existing. You're not even living. You're just there in the moment. But the thing that I like about photosynthesis, one of the main components is water. And so for me, water represents life, love, inspiration, encouragement, empowerment, all of those good things. Any type of positive affirmation that you can pour into yourself to start building yourself back up and getting back to the person who you are supposed to be. And that watering is so important, and because 70% of our body is made up of water. It's, y'all, positive affirmations, I'm telling you that water is life. And so when you're speaking and you're watering yourself, what happens is, as you're saying things and you're saying all of these things, you're activating evaporation. And so what happens, things go up into the air, all these positive things that you've been speaking into yourself to get yourself to grow and to get yourself out of this darkness that we all have been in. And so when things start evaporating, it goes up into the air. And so one of the last key parts is the sun. And the sun represents God, Mother Earth, spirit, love, light, anything that you hold true to be that epitome of God for you. And so the thing that I like is that when the sun gets this and it goes up into the atmosphere, the sun has to do its part. It has to respond with the chain of command that it's in. And so what happens is, as it goes up, the sun, all of these positive affirmations and things that you're saying, activating, goes up into the air. The sun gets it, and guess what happens? Like they say in the church, for all the church goers, when blessings go up, when praises go up, blessings come down. So what happens is, as everything comes right back down onto us, the sun starts shining on us. What happens to that seed? That seed starts to grow. And it grows roots. It starts to spread. Something starts to happen. Something starts to change in your mind and in your spirit. And so all of these entities have to work together, because something, like Miss Giovanna said, something was asked in that watering, in that positive affirmation. Something was asked. And so now that we understand that something was asked, something has got to change. And we have not because we ask not. We all know that if you want something, you have to ask for something, whether it's during your meditation time, during your prayer time, or just if you're just wanting something and things aren't going right now, just like I need something positive to happen. Once you put it out there, something has to, you activated that very thing you wanted. And so some of the things that I asked for were to be brave, thoughtful, lovable, courageous, successful, compassionate, and confident, brilliant, talented, insightful, adventurous, fearless, and wonderful. What and in my growing, what I learned is that, and I had to write this down so I did not forget. You do not let people stop your growth by reminding you of the things you used to do.
Yes.
No matter how ugly, no matter how gutter it was, you never allow people to come back into your space, ever, when you're in the space of growing, and you let them remind you of what was. So, Miss Laqwanda, I'm gonna let you go in, honey, because see, I talk all night.
I had two moments. I had two moments. A part of being lost and brokenness, and I know a lot of people share this, because Queen, you touched on it as well, was dealing with, and I'm going to say, the church. I had been told with my mental health condition that it was due to me sinning, that I had sinned and I had caused this to happen to myself. And because I wasn't in line with the word, then I was being cursed and attacked. And this was all my fault. And when that happened, and I was delusional, and I was having a lot of delusions that were religious based, they were grandiose. It became difficult for me to reconnect to my spirituality and to find out who I am and where I belong. And the second issue I had dealt with my career, because above just being a counselor, I wanted to be someone to help people. I always wanted that. That was always my connection. I wanted to be in that space. And I was at one of my lowest lows after I had been hospitalized. And I was laying, and this is how bad it was. I could not deal with sunlight or light at all. I was laying on the floor in my room at my sister's house with my head inside a closet and the rest of my body out because I did not want to see light. But there was a part of me, even when you're lost, there's a part of you still yearning for connection, still waiting to hear something. And I couldn't step into a church. Couldn't step into a church at all. But I would look at services online. And one morning, as I laid on the floor with my head in that closet, I heard Jeremiah 29:11 for the first time. And it was the first, I say for the first time because it's the first time I heard it. Because you hear things and they go over you. But it's the first time I heard it. And it says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and future." And I sat up and I said, "What did that just say?" And I keyed in on the words, "not to harm you." And I'm like, what? And a part of me began to shake. And I began to cry. And I was like, this isn't my fault. I'm like, this isn't my fault. I still have a purpose. There's still a plan out there. And I was like, okay, what is it? I need to listen. I need to listen. I need to watch because it's coming. And shortly after, someone came to my house and they were unemployed at the time. They told me, you know, I'm volunteering just to keep my experience up. And I was like, It had been 3 years after my hospitalization. I was like, well, I guess I'll try to volunteer or something. And I was looking in the newspaper and there was this massive article, join us as a crisis counselor. And I said, what? Join us as a crisis counselor? And I said, that's me. Because I knew then, because I had told myself for years, you can't go back and be a therapist. My psychiatrist told me the second time, because I tried to go back to be a therapist after my hospitalization twice and only stayed on each job for 3 months, quit both jobs. And my psychiatrist told me, at what point are you going to realize you can't do this anymore? And I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I had convinced myself that I couldn't do this anymore. But when I saw that huge ad in that paper, and it said crisis counseling, I said, I want to be with people, not when they're at their greatest. I don't want to be with people when they're so-so. I want to be with people at rock bottom, when no one else wants to be there, when they're having the scariest thoughts of their lives, when they're in the scariest moments of their lives, when nothing around them makes sense, when they're unsure of who they are. That's where I want to be, because that is exactly who I was. And that was my moment. And even though I had already been to grad school, these people's like, you got to do 4 months of training before you can do this. I said, you know what? 4 months of training, I'll do.
Yeah.
Because that is when I saw, this is me. And when I began to get in that space again, I would come across articles and I was like, I want to tell somebody what I dealt with.
Yeah.
And I remember that I had, and I had been on, had gotten on YouTube and was a natural hair blogger. And I woke up one morning in the middle of the night, it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. And I said, I have to say something. I have to speak. I have to tell people what this is like. Because I didn't have anyone that looked like me or had the experiences that I did. And so I put up my camera, and with tears streaming down my eyes, I began to tell my story of being hospitalized, of losing everything, of being unemployed for 3 years, and not being connected to my daughter physically in the same household. And those were my moments where I was just like, you know what? We're about to this is about to change. But the thing that we need to understand is these moments takes time. And they don't come immediately when you're in the midst of the storm. They don't come immediately when you feel like, you know, the ship is about to sink. You know, sometimes when the ship is sinking, you forget that you got life jackets. You forget that there's a boat that, you know, that's available for you to get on. You forget those things, you know, but I'm a firm believer that the universe, God, Mother Earth, whoever you believe will come to you in that moment and will speak to you in that moment, and it will change your life, and it will save your life. And I'm going to mention this and I won't let you get back on the Queen. The day that I was hospitalized, the very first time, I had been delusional. I was not connected at all. And I began to have a lot of dangerous thoughts. And it was pouring down raining. And in this time, part of my delusions was I believed that everyone in a black car or black vehicle was out to get me. You know how many black vehicles are on the road? And I was on the interstate driving. And I was like, I can't take this anymore. Pouring down raining. The rain stopped for like 5 minutes and the light came out and immediately spoke to me, go to the emergency room now. And I was a licensed therapist at this time. And it was difficult for me. But in that moment, in that storm, in that darkness, in that place of confusion, the universe, God, Mother Earth has never abandoned you and will speak to you and will pull you out and place you where you need to be. It doesn't mean that everything is going to be great. Because going to the hospital and everything that happened before the hospital, that was a tornado. That was a storm out in my life. Cleanup had to take place afterwards. And you can see the devastation in the land. And you can get discouraged by the devastation that you see. But it's possible to rebuild. Mm-hmm. Things may not be the same, but guess what? Things can always be greater.
Yes.
Always be greater. So let's keep it Queen.
Yes, and that brought up a thought for me when me and Giovanna was talking the other night. You know, I shared with her. I said, you know, a lot of times when we're in those type of spaces, we're like, is the sun ever gonna shine? Because so much turmoil has gone on for so long, and it's like, my goodness, is the sun ever going to shine? Is it going to stay clouded forever? Is it always going to rain? Is it always going to be storming? Is it always going to be something comes up when you think you're on the right path, then boom, life comes with something else. So it's like we have to realize, even though it's dark and you may have been in it for a long time, it is a process. It's a process to make progress. That's one of the things that I've learned. And so, which is beautiful because this kind of crosses over into my next question is, what positive reinforcements or coping mechanisms did you come up with and use while things were getting back together? Miss Giovanna, we'll start with you.
Yeah, when I was at my lowest, I was forced to sit with myself. And sitting with ourselves is also a form of meditation. And so I would meditate for hours and hours. And that I was starting to fill myself up with love. And I didn't even realize it. It was just so addicting to just sit with yourself and to feel this unconditional love kind of rain down on you that you didn't even know was there. And like a lot of other people, we feel like we can't necessarily turn to the church, that we can turn to God. You know, we don't have that connection. And so when I found that connection, I was instantaneously addicted to it. I loved it. And I would sit with myself. I would play with like rocks and stones, and I created altars that I didn't even realize, you know, meant something. But I was starting to really embrace myself and understand my spirituality by sitting with myself, you know, by silencing my mind, by, instead of complaining about what was going on and complaining about who wasn't for me, I just sat and I listened. And it wasn't until I heard like talking that I was like, there really is like someone up there, you know, like there's really people around me and I'm not alone. And I started to feel love, and it was it was so unnormal. It was, at first when we feel that, we can reject it, you know, because we don't know what it is. We don't feel we're worthy. We've been told that we're not what is deserving of love. You know, we feel punished for who we are, where we're at, what we've done. There's so much shame. And when we can sit with ourselves, whether it is a sitting meditation, whether it's working out, you know, to make yourself feel good, whether it's treating yourself. For me, because I couldn't go anywhere, it was meditation. It was affirmations. It was not really writing it down because I couldn't write it down, but it was saying it. It was beginning to speak life into myself when for so many years I had been speaking death. I had been speaking self-hate. And just like your description, when you water yourself, you know, you grow. But if you don't water yourself, if you starve yourself, if you become dry with self-love, that's when you die. And I did die, but you know what? I rose from the ashes. I realized that this was my purpose, that I am literally finding out my power. You know, I did not realize that my darkest point was the pivotal point where I would realize who I was becoming, what I was supposed to do, who I was supposed to help. Just like Laqwanda, I realized that I was supposed to be with the people who needed help, not who thought that they were, you know, perfect. No, I wanted to help the people who felt unlovable, who felt unworthy, who didn't feel seen, because that is how I felt. And I realized that that's what my darkness was supposed to be teaching me. And when I sat with myself, it began to click slowly and surely that everything had purpose. My pain had purpose. Within my pain was my power to overcome this journey, this whole process. That was my strength. That was my strength training. I was in a spiritual gym and I was like, why are you giving me all these things to lift? It hurts. It's uncomfortable. And I realized that when you go work out, when you go to the gym and you're lifting the 40 pounds or you're doing squats, what happens the next day after squat day? You hurt. You can't walk, but you do it. You keep doing it. And that's what I was like, finally making the connection of, this is my gym. This is not meant to break me. This is meant to build me up. And with that little empowerment, that and those little affirmations and the sitting with myself and finally connecting with spirit, it was like an overhaul. And it didn't happen all in one time, but slowly but surely I felt lovable. I felt loved. I felt seen. I felt heard. And you know what? When that happened, I began to love myself. I began to fill myself up with love. And that was the first time in my whole life that happened. That I was able to take affirmations and use it to heal me rather than to hurt me. And I realized the power of words. I realized that I have power. I have power to speak life into myself, to affirm that I am healing, to claim that I am healed, and that power that we possess. I don't think I would have found it if I hadn't gone through my darkness, if I hadn't been dismissed, if I hadn't been, you know, neglected. I wouldn't have realized that my superhero is myself. I didn't make that connection until I was struggling, until God was like, hey, sit with me and listen. I was always the one talking. We talk about prayers, but meditation is our way of receiving a message. Prayers are going up, and meditation is when we can receive it. And so affirmations and meditation were the biggest things. And I think if anyone has heard of mirror work, that is another huge thing that can help in connecting you with self. And when I first started mirror work, I cried. I cried because I couldn't look at myself. I still had that shame. I couldn't see myself for who I was. So when I began to meditate and when I began to do affirmations, I could eventually stand in front of the mirror and look at myself and be proud of who I was. No matter if I was still struggling in my darkness, because you know what? I've learned to dance in the rain. I've learned to enjoy the storm. I've learned to not wish it away, but embrace it, because that's what I was looking for. I was looking for healing, and I was just seeing it in a different light. So switching your focus on maybe one thing that is good, that is happening, that is healing in your life, rather than everything else going around, even if it's 10 things, focusing on the one thing that matters most is you. So switching your awareness to self, rather than if somebody else is going to accept you, someone else is going to love you. All that matters is loving yourself and making that connection through affirmations, through mirror work, through playing with crystals, and just connecting with the earth and grounding. There's so much that just can help us, but we're too busy, saying that no one's helping us, that we're missing all these messages. We're missing these signs. When you see the signs, you realize you're not alone. And it's just a beautiful thing when you can make that connection with self and spirit and just realize that your healing is on the way. Your healing is here. When you make that connection, when you affirm who you are with power and belief, it grows. Every day it grows, and you blossom because you're filling yourself up. And this little flower that you thought was dead, with that little affirmations, daily affirmations, you become a beautiful flower, and you realize that it always has been a process of dying, of rebirth, of sprouting, and you just are seeing yourself at a different period, not realizing of who you are going to become.
Mm-hmm. So I would say for me, one of the positive reinforcements that I realized and that I came into the awareness of, just like you and Laqwanda, was that I realized that I wasn't the only person in the world that was going through what I was going through. There were other people that were going through some of the similar things that I was going through. But a pivotal moment was when my aunt, who pretty much raised me, when she passed away last year from pancreatic cancer. And I had found myself in a space where I started going back into that dark place again. And I could hear my aunt's voice saying, "That's not who you are. You have purpose." And in that purpose, what I discovered was Bimo Inspiration. And Bimo Inspiration are just 60 seconds of daily empowerment, encouragement, and inspirational videos to speak life, light, help into any person that is willing and open to receive that small little piece of healing, that little piece of the puzzle that's healing for some people. And so what happened was that one piece of the puzzle for me was self-healing. And so once I connected with that self-healing and I started healing myself, then another piece of the puzzle, self-love, started. It was able to fit right into the next piece of that. And then after that, after I got into a place to where I started loving myself, and then I got another piece of the puzzle was get your mind together, get your mental capacity together. So it's like all of these pieces of the puzzle I was able to start putting together, so that way in the end, and I'm still putting pieces of the puzzle together, but in the end desire and the end goal for any and all of our lives is to have this beautiful picture of all of these hundreds and thousands and millions of pieces of puzzles that we all have in our lives, that we're all trying to master in some type of way, shape, form, and or fashion, to all come together as one unit to make us whole. So remaining in happiness is our last main talking point. And so I want to ask Miss Laqwanda, what were 2 positive behaviors that you put in place to keep your happiness at the forefront of your mind and staying consistent with those positive behaviors?
Number 1 for me was therapy. I had been to therapists before my official diagnosis. I had struggled for years, had been hospitalized, was getting medication. And since I had been a counselor, I was just like, oh no, I'll be okay, I'll be fine. And then I was like, nope, you need to take your butt to therapy, and this needs to be something that's an ongoing process for you, because you need that space. You need that safe space. You need that space where you can be real, where you can take every mask that you put on, every layer, every coat that's not you, and just be vulnerable. And I have to give myself permission to be vulnerable, because, sometimes I have to just, sometimes, I would find back then, I would find that, if I tell people this, then they're going to think I'm weak. If I tell people this, they're not going to think that I'm the mental health professional. But, sharing is how I found myself. And I had to let go. And a big thing, I had to let go of the self-blame, of blaming myself that I was the cause for this, or I'm not doing something right, or I'm not on the right track. And I had to forgive myself for thinking I had to be perfect and I had to get everything right. I had to let go of those things. And we have to let ourselves off the hook sometimes, because we will beat ourselves into the ground when things don't go our way. And sometimes it's outside of our control. I didn't wake up and say, oh, I want this lifelong condition. It actually, it humbled me a lot in a lot of spaces. It humbled me, because who I serve is also who I am. And so when I speak to people, I'm not speaking to people based upon what some book taught me. I'm not speaking to people based upon what some professor taught me. I'm speaking to people based upon how I want to be treated when I'm sitting in that chair across from someone else, or when I'm on that phone crying out, or when I'm balled up and I can't move, or when I can't shower, or I can't eat, or I can't leave the house. When you turn it around to yourself and you say, how do I want to be dealt by another human being? How do I want to be nurtured by another human being? How do I want to be loved by another human being? It changes. Your thought process begins to change, and how you interact begins to change. And outside of that therapy and self-forgiveness process, the bigger thing for me is I believed in myself that I was more. Because when I got sick, I was like, oh, can't be a therapist. Can't be a counselor anymore. Gotta let go of mental health. And when it came back, I had remembered this one moment. I've had several moments, but this one moment when before I was hospitalized, and I was actively delusional, and the delusions were very, very bad that day. And I was in the hallway walking, and I dropped to the ground, and I crawled up like a child like this. And I was like, please make this go away. And I was like, please make this go away. And then I stopped and I said, if this is not going to go away, then let me be the proudest person that I can be. And I mean that by allow me to be proud with myself, allow me to touch someone else, allow me to succeed. And then all hell broke loose afterwards. And that's the thing that we have to realize, that sometimes we deal with stuff and we get to a point, and I don't like to tell people, oh, it'll get better, because we're looking at my process 10 years later. Mm-hmm. But I had to believe that I was more. I got on YouTube and I told my story. I got on blogs and I wrote about who I was. I had people reach out to me and say, hey, I know you're in Mississippi. I was in Mississippi at the time, but can you drive to this state and be on a TV show? And I said, you know what? I'm coming. And so I was on a television show. And I went from there, and I just began to build and build and build and share my experiences. And it became a part of who I am until one day someone noticed. And I end up becoming a director of outreach at the national office of one of the largest mental health nonprofits in the country. All from sharing my truth, not being afraid, and believing that I was more.
That's amazing.
Believing that I was more. Believing that there was a greater purpose. Believing that regardless of what I was seeing or what I was going through in my life, that this thing can turn out right. Believing that, I had the ability. Believing that I could walk through the fire. On my back, I have a phoenix tattoo because I said I was reborn through flame. I was reborn through the fire. And I realized, oh, I can't be a mental health therapist? That's fine. Never stopped me. When I realized who I was and I believed that I was more, I've done everything I ever want to do. I've spoke on national campaigns. I've spoken for federal agencies. I've spoken to pharmaceutical companies. I have people reach out to me. I share my platform. I share my name. I share who I am. I believe that something greater. And I believe when I go through a storm that something is going to be birthed out of it. That is how Healing Black Women came to existence. I was coming out of a major depressive episode last year. And I said, there has to be another platform for Black women to be vulnerable, for Black women to be safe, for Black women to receive healing. And that was given birth through. And that is my life, and I accept it. I don't worry about what people have to say about me. Yeah. I ain't got that kind of time. Too many people need to be healed. Too many people need to be whole. Too many people whose lives are on the line, not realizing that they are not alone. I ain't got time for you. I ain't got time for the naysayers. I don't have time for the people who don't believe. I believe in everything that I do. Yes. I believe in the people that I connect to. Because I've seen it. I've had people walk up to me and say, I was considering. I've had people message me and say, I need help. I've experienced that in my life. And so for me, that positive thing was just believing that I am more in everything. And when you accept who you are meant to be, then you will get connected to the people who are meant to recognize you. And not only that, you will be connected to the people who need to hear your voice, because the people who reject you, they don't need to hear you. Someone needs to know that, in your town that you're from, that you went through that. Someone needs to know that, I can overcome this because someone went through a similar situation. Someone's faith needs to be reignited. Someone's dreams need to be pushed forward. Understand this, by accepting who you are, you can give birth to someone else's purpose. When you accept who you are, you can give birth to someone else's purpose, and you may never know it. So I believe, if anything else, I believe that I am more. I believe that I'm more than what I am right now today, and will continue to believe until I no longer have breath on this earth. But I believe that even when I go, that something has been left, that there has been a change and a shift in the atmosphere in someone's life, that they can grow, they can mature, and they can move on. Because you had the courage to say, you had the courage to believe, and someone believed, if you could do it, I got this too.
I know for me, I stopped blaming myself for all of the things that I had gone through. I stopped blaming myself for the self-inflicted pain, whether it was through cutting or whether it was through self-medicating. I stopped blaming myself for even my marriage ending because I did transition. I had to stop blaming myself, and when I did that, I started loving myself. There was no more lying. There was no more fakery. There was no more any of that. And I was able to be my true, authentic self. And when that happened, so many different things birthed out of me that I didn't even know that I was carrying, that I was pregnant with. I was able to birth a nonprofit for trans women. And just like you, Ms. Laqwanda, I've spoken at Pandora, radio station. I've spoken at different organizations. They've asked me to come and speak and share my story, share my experiences, because I submitted and I asked. I only asked one thing. I said, I just want to be able to help another person so that way they don't go through the same things that I went through. And then when I started walking into that, I was able to start loving other people because I knew how to love myself. And when I started doing that, I was able to keep people encouraged, to keep them going, and able to help people. And a lot of times, and I love what you said about you're helping people that you may not even know, because people have said that a billion times to me. They was like, you never know, and you will never meet a person on the other side of the country, on the other side of the world, that's watching your story, that's watching what you do, how it's changing and affecting them, and then out of them birth something. I've had people, that have wanted to kind of duplicate them on inspiration. They're like, we see what you're doing, and I want to be able to do something like that. And I was, do it. You could never have enough empowerment. You could never have enough being inspired and wanting to be inspirational. You could never have enough love for the next person. One of my favorite scriptures in the Bible is, if you have done it to the least of these, you have done it unto me. And I've always felt like if I can go and help someone, and I'm not talking about the person that's got it all together, I'm talking about the ones that are downtrodden, the ones that are at rock bottom, that has been in that same space. I don't have anybody to help me. I want to be able to help those people, and those positive behaviors that I put in place, that stop blaming myself and start loving myself, so that way I can love others, all because I have been able to pull people out of certain situations that they felt they could have never gotten out of. Helping people get into housing and helping people get into school and college, and being able to, assist in any type of way that I could to help the next person is so worth it. And that's where, for me, remaining in happiness means, because as long as I can see the fruits of my labor, like I'm sure Miss Giovanna and like Miss Laqwanda have, that we're able to see the things that we've been able to do and help with, and help people with, when we're able to see what we've birthed and it's helping other people, it is so, it's an overwhelming feeling of happiness and eternal joy and internal joy. And it's like, oh my God, like, wow. Ugh. And it all comes, and it all stems from, like Miss Giovanna said, it all comes from love. Once you embody love and you embrace it and you know what it is, and you know what love is, and you can carry that with you, you can go into a room and change hearts just by your aura, just by your energy. You can do that. So I want to go into the next thing is what can we, and I asked Miss Giovanna, I asked you with this, what can we as a community of women of all shades, sizes, genders, sexualities, what can we do to be our sister's keeper?
I think if we created more of a safe space that was non-judgmental. We try to compare so much with so many other people that we don't realize that we're more alike than we're our common place that we can come together is our darkness. And so when we can come to a place that we're not belittling, we're not judging, where we're saying that that is your trauma, that hurt you, that has value. Don't try and dismiss it, own it. I feel when you can own your truth, you become a powerful being because no one can hold it over you. And to have a community where you can speak openly about your truth, where you can, I mean, YouTube, just like Laqwanda, she went on YouTube and spoke her truth. You spoke your truth. If we have more people speaking our truth, if we have more people sharing our darkness, if we have more people being more vulnerable with ourselves, more loving with ourselves, sharing that, you know what, self-confidence is a little different than self-love. You know, we could portray that we're confident. We could portray that we've got it all together, but where can we go when we're hurt? You know, you can go on Instagram and you can add all these filters and make it seem like everything's great, but we need a community. We need a place where you can feel that you can let down your guard, that you can be yourself. Because sometimes it takes someone else seeing us before we see ourselves. And if we're around other people who don't have their guards up, don't have their walls up, we can then take our walls down. And that was why I wrote a book. I wrote a book about facing our truths, about being empowered by it. And you know, when I wrote it, it was a healing process for me. But there are so many people who have come to me and said, wow, like it's changed my life, because I realized like I can come from the darkness. I can own my truths. I can own it. Like it doesn't have to own me. I have a voice. I have value. And to have a place, a safe place that we can openly express our vulnerability, openly express, hey, you know, I made some bad choices in my life, but I'm not going to judge myself because I'm around people who aren't judging me either. If we have that just place where we can just break down, you know, that is what, when we speak our truths, we are also opening a door of vulnerability for other people. We are showing them that it is okay to feel. We love ourselves, but sometimes we can't see ourselves, so we can't love ourselves. So if we're around other people who can express that they've struggled with it, but here they're at, then I feel like it gives hope. And when you have hope, then you can move forward and not feel like you're alone. You'll have that cheerleader saying, hey, are you okay? Did you get up today? Did you checking on somebody else, thinking about someone else. And then it's an exchange, because they are then thinking about you. They are trying to help you. It's that sisterhood and bond that we really need to embrace the traumas with it, rather than, the support in success. What about the support in healing?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so as we are getting ready to come to the end of our second conference, our second day, 2-day conference, Miss Laqwanda, can you leave us with a line of encouragement?
I would say, and I had to learn this, is don't forget to experience life. We know how to live. We know how to go day by day. We know how to survive. And somehow we mix up surviving, living, and experiencing life. When you're surviving, you're just taking what it gives you. Mm-hmm. when you're living, you're acknowledging certain things that's going on. But when you're experiencing, it's going back to that space of intention. You're setting goals. You're connecting to you. You're connecting to you and how you want to respond and how you want to be seen and how you want to be cared for. That's the difference. You have to allow yourself to experience the things that don't feel so great. You can't avoid and say, oh well, because that oh well would catch up with you. But experience the joys. Give yourself the opportunity to smile. Give yourself the opportunity to laugh. Give yourself the opportunity to experience peace. If anything, I would say experience life and understand that you're not alone. It may not be someone physically there next to you, but if you go searching, I promise you'll find a Facebook group. You'll find a page on Instagram. A lot of the women who support the Healing Black Women platform, I haven't met them physically. I found them on the internet and I read what they were doing. And I said, you know what? Hey, come on, let's get it. But experience and be brave. Yeah. And when you need help, say, I need help. Yeah. And if it doesn't come the first time, keep believing that it will. Yeah. Keep believing that it will.
That's beautiful. I love that. I wanted to say this. When you find yourself in an unfamiliar territory, start your photosynthesis and watch how your life starts to flourish, and you will never be the same again. You will never be the same again. So, Miss Giovanna, can you share with everyone how they can find you on social media and get in contact with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I have an Instagram. It's coach_Giovanna, and that's Giovanna. And then I also have a Facebook that's Giovanna Pryor. So I'll put that in the group chat. Okay. But yes, I love meeting people. So if you've been on here, you've been watching us, just send a friend request or a DM, and let's form a friendship.
Okay, Miss Laqwanda.
Oh, you can find me on Instagram at Laqwanda's Heart, YouTube Laqwanda's Heart, and always at Healing Black Women on Instagram, Facebook, and we do have a Facebook group as well.
And I can be found on Instagram as Queen Amunet, also Bema Inspiration, and also for anyone that would love to be connected with my nonprofit organization, NOMO organization, which stands for Navigating Omitted Minds Over Time. It is NOMO_org. I'm also on Facebook as Zarian Newbill, ZARION. NEWBILL, and also Bema Inspiration and NOMO Organization both are on Facebook as well. And before we leave, I definitely want to mention we have one more day of all of this good, exciting healing, and I'm so excited about it. Sessions tomorrow, start 3 p.m. Central Standard Time and start 4 p.m. Eastern. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. That was right. Okay. 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And our final session starts 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 8 p.m. Did I say it wrong again?
Yes, it's 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern.
There you go. Okay. These time zones, I tell you. But yes, definitely. Thank you, ladies, so much for joining us. It has been an amazing conversation, and I hope we've been able to heal some of our sisters by sharing our stories during this 1 hour meeting. So thank you all so much for being a part from the bottom of my heart. And thank you, Miss Laqwanda, for allowing me, someone from a very small country town, to be able to share my light and my love and my experiences with healing Black women. Thank you so much for entrusting me. I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much.